On May 29th, it was a Friday, a group of maybe 30 protesters decided to go to Busch Stadium to do an action. It was a mostly silent action. It was a very peaceful action, other than a few Cardinal fans who decided to throw a cup of ice that actually hit one of our comrades' children. He has two children, I think they're like 6 and 7, very close in age to my children because I'm the mother of 3. Boys myself. And so it was very peaceful. We did a little chalking in the street. We stood on the corner. There was some chanting. The game wrapped up and we, stood on the corners. I passed out literature to people. I told them Jesus loved them. I told them to have an amazing evening. And then we all marched back to Keener Plaza where we had met earlier in the day. Approximately 13 of us decided, it was right around 10:30. It was a Friday night. Washington Avenue was going to have a lot of people there, so we decided to disrupt Washington Avenue while people were partying after the Cardinals game. Again, we were very peaceful. We engaged people on the sidewalks. From time to time, we would say Black Lives Matter. From time to time, we would have engaging discussions with people about why we're out here protesting and why it is that we're spending our Friday night educating people on police brutality. As we were making our way back, some of us took to the streets, again saying Black Lives Matter to a mostly receptive crowd. We wrapped up on Washington and 11th Street, and we were trying to decide who was going to take who home. We knew that our action was over. A police officer rode up on a bicycle. He got off. He didn't say anything. He grabbed one of our comrades, Daruba Shakur, and began to arrest him. So we stood around and we asked him why he was arresting Daruba. We let the officer know that we were leaving and that our action was over. He called for backup, and other police officers began coming to the scene. One of them was a white shirt. I think it was Lieutenant Dan. Don't quote me on that, but he approached me. He touched my arm. I put my hands up. I let him know I wasn't a threat. He backed away from me, he walked away, and he proceeded to arrest Mike Lotak, and that's when you actually see the video began. As he was arresting Mike Lotak, Mike actually handed me his phone. I got the phone, I backed away slowly so that I could record his arrest. Once we knew that we could not help our fellow protesters, myself, the young lady Lachelle, and then EJ began walking away. One of the other protesters was running and the police were trying to chase him, so you hear me call out to tell them that he wasn't a threat, we weren't doing anything, to let him go. At that moment, you see the police officer jump out, he tases EJ. I've never seen anybody tase before. It was scary just watching that happen to somebody, and so I start to shout out as a police officer rushes me. As he's rushing me, another police officer comes from my left and he tased me. One of the prongs went into my right hand just below my thumb. The other one caught on my sweater in my right breast area. As I was falling to the ground, you see the screen go black. Because I was actually laying on top of the phone. That's why you can only hear my voice. I'm actually laying on the ground. He actually put the cuffs on me and he tased me at least 2 more times. As he was tasing me, we were making eye contact. So when you hear me talking, I'm actually speaking to him and telling him that he's hurting me. The other officers are telling me to quit resisting arrest, but I'm basically already under arrest because they have my left arm behind my back in the cuff. So they're trying to tell me to put my right arm behind my back because they know I have the phone. They probably know that I'm recording the interaction. If you know anything about being tased, it's an electric shock. It's kind of like having a seizure, and therefore I didn't have very much voluntary movement in my arm, and just the act of him trying to force my arm behind my back was painful enough, which is why I'm crying out. And I'm literally asking him, begging him to stop because I'm already in a submissive position. But he willfully violated numerous numerous clauses that they have in their tasing policy. I wasn't an active threat. I didn't have a weapon. I was already under arrest. I was in a submissive position. And yet he willfully did that because he was targeting me. They've seen me out there a lot. I've been to many protests, so it wasn't a coincidence or accident that he chose me and he chose to enact the kind of violence that he did against me. It's just kind of weird because that same day, that exact same day, I believe it was on the East Coast, a 50-year-old man was killed by police because he was tased. And so I feel blessed in a sense that I was able to survive with just having to live and deal with the trauma of having that experience. The trauma didn't really end with being tased because, of course, they have to take you to jail. You're arrested. I had a prong in my left thumb, as I said. They actually pulled the prong out on the street while I was in handcuffs with my arms behind my back. I wouldn't walk. I couldn't walk. I was traumatized. I was just overwhelmed. So they actually lifted me up. They didn't take any care of how I may have felt. They lifted me up as I screamed in pain and stuffed me in the back of the paddy wagon and took me down to be processed. While we were being waited to be processed, I was the second person off of the paddy wagon. I was the last person to receive medical treatment while we were locked up. And by medical treatment, I mean he gave me a Band-Aid and some first aid cream and some ibuprofen and told me I could do it myself. That was the medic. And while we were waiting to be seen by the medic, officers came in and harassed us. We had bandanas on that night. One of them took one of my bandanas and was like, "Yeah, you're so loud when you're out in the street. What do you have to say now? You know, what do you have to say now?" So they were basically continuing the harassment while we were in a position, in a submissive place. The overall experience was just a shock and trauma that someone who was walking down the sidewalk could be brutalized in such a way by not just a police officer, but a black police officer. His name is Stephen Ogunjobi. He was said to have graduated first in his class in 2012 from the police academy, so it just racked my brain that he doesn't know what his own taser policy is.
Were there other persons in your community affected by the incident? If yes, please explain.
Yes. I feel that the whole protest family was impacted by it. When I woke up it happened on a Friday. When I woke up one Sunday morning, that video hit Facebook. And all of us are friends on Facebook, so all of us had probably the first thing Sunday morning. That was probably the first thing that we saw. I saw it myself 5 times. I know many of my protest family said that they saw it many times. I know family that said that they only heard about it and couldn't watch it because just knowing that happened to me and how they feel about me was traumatizing. So it was traumatizing for the individuals that were out there with me that had to experience that had to witness that with me. It's traumatizing for my other comrade who was tased multiple times by the police. It was traumatizing for the immediate community which I live. I'm on the school board. I'm on the board of directors for University City. I'm also a mentor and life coach for Real Talk Incorporated. And one day when I was coming home with my boys from work, there were some young ladies that were riding their bikes in the neighborhood, and they literally followed my car home, or me home, on their bikes. And when I got out, I hadn't told my boys yet what happened to me. It was still fresh. That was maybe Monday or Tuesday. And so I gave my boys the keys to the house. I told them to go inside and I'd be in a moment. And the girls stood at the end of my driveway and they just looked at me. And they were, really upset. And I said, "Are you concerned about me?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you need a hug?" And they were like, "Yeah." And so they began asking me questions because they're probably 9, 10, 11, about the same age as my children. Children have access to YouTube. This video was on YouTube. And so they had seen the video and they were worried about me. And so at that moment, I also knew that I was going to have to tell my boys because they didn't know. And I didn't want them to either hear it from their friends or to go on YouTube and hear and actually witness it. So I did let them know what happened and that that I was okay, that I would be okay and that I would survive. But I could tell that they were very upset about it. And when we were lucky enough to be graced with Dr. Angela Davis here, I took my oldest son to that truth telling. And when I spoke about what happened to me, I let the audience know that there was a YouTube video, and he went out and he looked it up and he saw it. And to this day, my children have been with me protesting, and they've already been fearful and distrustful of the police, and that only reinforced the energy that they had towards them because, again, of course, I'm their mother. Can you imagine how a boy feels about his mother and then to have to experience that? And so they experienced, as many other people have said, a certain amount of secondary trauma from having to bear witness to that as well.
What changes do you recommend for your community to improve the relationship between citizens and police?
Well, as I have said many a time, as we have said many a time, the whole damn system is guilty as hell. And there's not one thing that you can do. I liken this to a dilapidated, condemned house whose very foundation is broken. The foundation to this house is in shambles, and we're trying to go in and remodel. We want to put in a new stove here and a new refrigerator there and some new carpeting and maybe some tile, and that's not going to do shit. I'm sorry, excuse me, but it's not going to do anything when we need to tear it down and rebuild, because the very fabric of the house was built on structural racism and on the policing of Black people as commodities and properties. And so therefore, until this country actually comes to realize that we are not property, that we are full humans with autonomy, our own rights, and we deserve the respect that we as the original people deserve, then there will be no reconciliation with the police. We as a community don't owe them anything. They owe us, because as tax-paying citizens, as people who pay their salary, who empower our government that has been given the authority by the Creator to do as we please, they need to come to terms with the fact that they are here to protect and serve us. And so anything that's going to happen is going to have to start with them, and it's going to have to be a complete and total shift and change in how we view what that entity does in our communities. Otherwise, there will be no peace, there will be no reconciliation, there will be no community involvement with them, because the whole system on which they're built is built to scare, to terrorize, and to humiliate the people who look like me, who look like many of the people in this room. And so I can't come up with a solution that will probably satisfy this kind of forum. I want to tear it down and start over.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.